what made you get to coaching? Because I've been coaching lacrosse for, well, before I moved down to Georgia for like 8 years, and I love it. I love coaching kids. So I kind of want to get what your experience is coaching.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's a pretty cool story. When I was talking about when I was overweight and I was in this spot in my life where I wasn't happy, I got some of the best advice that I've ever gotten in my life. And I was talking to a therapist, and he asked me, we were sitting down and he asked me, we were talking about, what do I want to do with my life and where do I
Hmm.
see myself going? And I had no idea. He said, well, what are you passionate about? And I said, honestly, nothing. And I couldn't think of anything that I was passionate about. And then I said, well, the one thing I'm passionate about is football. And I always have been. And then I went on to say, like my dream job would be to be a high school football coach. That's my dream job. And he said, well, what would it take for you to do that? And I said, well, I would have to go back to school and get my teaching certification. And that would take about 2 years. And by then, who knows if I'd even want to do it anymore and teach. And I don't really want to be a teacher at a school building.
Hmm.
And he said, well, are you sure that that's what you'd have to do? And I said, I'm pretty sure. He's like, why don't you do me a favor and reach out to your old head coach from high school and just see what it would take for you to become a football coach. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I reached out to him. He called me into his office and we had a meeting, and I explained everything to him. And he said, well, you can be a full-time lay coach or a community coach and not be a teacher in the building. And I was like, really? I didn't know that. He said, yeah, yeah. So that kind of opened the door for me. And granted, a lot of high school football coaches, especially at big 7A programs like South, um, they don't like to have community coaches or lay coaches because what is said in that meeting room cannot be pushed out into the community. It's
Hmm.
very private and there has to be a
Yeah.
lot of trust there. And thank God he knew me from high school and he knew my character and he gave me a shot. So with me working in logistics, I had an opportunity at that point. I was doing the internship at Nolan, and I had like a couple weeks left of it, and they were going to offer me a full-time job at the end of that internship where I had friends right out of college making over $100,000, a lot of commission based and things like that. And I was 23 years old, and that was very appealing to me. And I was like, okay, do I do this and go for the money, which it's a great environment, but I don't like sitting at a desk all day and talking on the phone. That's not really my style.
Yeah.
Or do I go after this passion of mine? And I am so glad I did what I did because I I've been coaching for 6 years now and I absolutely love it. So I decided to leave Nolan and go into business with my dad where I have a flexible schedule and I can be a full-time football coach. So during the season, I go up to practice. I work during the day and then I go up to practice at about 3 o'clock and I get home at like 7:30 or so. And then we have games on Friday. Thursday night is JV games, and then Friday night is our varsity games. I work all Saturday and Sunday watching film, so it's a 7 day a week job, and it's a lot going on during the season. But like right now, we're in the off season, and I have a little bit more time. But the coaching football is honestly one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. For me to be around high school kids and to see those guys develop and just interact with each other and watch the guy that's poking his head around in the mirror to see if I'm counting his reps. And, I relate to those people now,
Yeah.
so I kind of relate to the people that are all about it now. And I also relate to that kid that's doing that now. And it's just, there's so much that I can offer these guys. And I'm also good at what I do with that. And when you find something that you're passionate about and you see that you're good at it, it just lights that fire under you to continue to do it and just love every second of it.
Yeah. So, how does coaching football and doing the online like personal training stuff, how do they kind of gel together to kind of like help each other out?
So one of the best things that I learned after my first year of coaching, I was having my end of the year meeting with our head coach, and he was talking about relaying messages and getting points across and coaching styles and things like that, and
Mhm.
how to do that. And I said, well, the main goal is to get your point across, to teach this person something. And that was how I was viewing it, is that I have this information and I need to tell it to this player. And he said, there's another part to that you're missing. And that's to get the most out of that player. Right. And to do that, which all really good coaches do, are able to understand how that individual functions and how they receive coaching best.
Yep.
Some people will shut down if you scream at them. Some
Mhm.
people have to have you scream at them. So it's like this art that you learn in coaching high school football players and learning how they tick and how to get the most out of them and relay the information. So that's kind of the best thing that I've applied to this online coaching, is that I'm able to take clients and understand that not everybody's going to react the same, or somebody, to get the most out of one person could look completely different than the next person. So I try to apply that, and that's tough to do. It's really hard to do, and doing it with high school football players is a challenge, but you see yourself get better and better at it every single year. You start to see, okay, this is what gets this guy going, and that's what you continue to do, and you kind of just have to cater to the athlete so that you work together to get the best outcome.
Yeah. I think if you can get a hold of like understanding teenagers, you can get a hold of anybody.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
right.
because like obviously, like you said, some kids shut down, and they like I've dealt with that too. So like I understand like how that works and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's tough because like obviously like they're in a different age bracket compared to you, and like you're when you were in high school, it was a lot different compared to where they're at now.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Like I look back and I just remember how big of an influence my coaches had on me,
Hmm.
and things that they might have said that just came out of their mouth. It meant nothing to them. It meant everything to me. And like I remember every time a coach would pull me off to the side and have a sit down talk with me when I was in high school. And it meant so much. It told me that they cared about me. And it probably didn't mean a whole lot to the coach. He probably did it to several guys that day. And I have to remember that as a coach, especially with high school kids that are developing like that, is that it all matters. You
Hmm.
have to be very, very intentional about what you do and how you do it with these guys, because they will remember, whether you do or not. A lot of this stuff they will remember.
Yeah, definitely agree. So, when did you start doing like personal training, like coaching for clients?
Yeah, so I started when I dove into diet and I started getting into the gym. It took about 3 years for me to I had the results to back it up, where people were finally coming up to me and saying, hey man, what are you doing? And I had a group of friends that we would talk about this stuff, and they could clearly tell that I knew what I was talking about. Or I would go to the gym with them, and I would teach them how to do certain movements. Hey, turn
Mhm.
your wrist this way and drive your elbow, just
Yep.
cues.
Yep.
And they're just like, oh my gosh, like I feel it in my back so much more now. And I think it's that kind of earns validity and training people and people wanting advice from you. So I started off with just kind of helping people out with diet and things like that, friends for free. And then what I found is that when you're coaching and you're doing a good job, referrals are like crazy. They're like,
Mhm.
"Hey man, this guy I work with,
Yep.
he's trying to lose weight right now. Can you help him?" I'm like, "Yeah, send him my number." And started working with people like that. And then that was all for free. And then it reaches a point where it's starting to take up more time, and you're realizing that, like, hey, I have a lot of value in this. I have a lot to offer, and I'm going to charge that accordingly. So I started off and I just did like a fair assessment of what I thought I was worth. It's like, $50 a month. I'll help you with your diet. It's like nothing. And I've just kind of worked with more and more people, and people at the gym, they talk to me and I say, hey, I'm starting to do this. And then after about a year of doing that kind of like low key, I decided to turn it into a business, and I turned it into a business. And Now it's obviously with my Instagram following, it's taken off more than it has. But it's just, you know, it's an evolving thing. It starts out with conversations with people, you give them value, and then they text you or they reach out to you on Instagram and say, hey, I really appreciate that advice you gave me. You
Mhm.
think maybe that you could help me out? Say, yeah, this is kind of what I provide.
Yeah. So did you ever think you wanted to be like an in-person personal trainer, like a local, like Globo gym or anything like that? Or
Yeah, so I that one's tough for me. I so online coaching has its pros and cons. It's great in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
but it also has its drawbacks because you're not with them in person and you have to rely on videos and things like that. Um, the thing with me is that I'm very busy. You know, I have the logistics and the football. I have this business. I was the bass fishing coach for South for a while. You know, like I wear a lot of hats throughout the
Yeah.
day. I'm a husband. So I can't spend all this time in the gym. So and the thing is that I take my training so seriously, like more serious than I should. So when I'm in there, I'm like, I can't have somebody else detract from my time in here. And for that reason, I work out by myself a lot of the time. Um, and you know, I have a couple friends that I enjoy working out with because they have the same intensity and drive, but it's really hard for me to, and it's a downfall of mine, is like the patience to work with somebody new. And you know, if I want to take somebody into the gym to lift with me, it's like I'm trying to do my thing, and then it's kind of throwing off the vibe here.
Yeah.
um
No,
and you know,
I totally agree with that. Yeah, totally
yeah,
agree.
yeah, and if I had the time to be in the gym longer, I think I would be okay with it. But from everything else that I'm doing, it's like I have this 3 hour time gap. I'm going to eat my meal, go to the gym, eat my meal, and that's how it's going to look every time. I'm just so schedule oriented that if I get stuck up in a 20-minute conversation with somebody about, you know, the short head of the bicep, I'm just like, gosh, you just threw everything off, you know, and things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.